Hello, everybody, and welcome into Speaking Steagles, the premier Pennsylvania pro football podcast. I am Nick Vete. He's Ricardo Martinez Paz, and we have another episode coming at you right now, breaking down the Steelers falling, losing again, and the Eagles getting a victory, winning on the road against Washington. So we're going to jump into all that, break it down. We've also got to break down these upcoming games as well. In week 9, the Steelers playing tonight against the Titans, and the Eagles playing on Sunday. So we're going to break down both of those games. But first, Ricardo, how you doing, my man?
Pretty good, man. I'm just now realizing this is like the halfway point of the season, which is kind of
flying
crazy.
by.
Yeah, that's like, oh man. But yeah, no, pretty good, man. Feel pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I mean, halfway point of the season, it's interesting. I read an article yesterday in The Athletic, and it kind of like also said, the turning point of the halfway season, the turning point of last year was kind of when the Steelers turned things around. And, Mike Tomlin always has that mantra, we want to play AFC North football, which once the weather gets bad and, it gets cold outside, you get some snow, you get some bad rain, you really turn to kind of that ground and pound mindset. That's what the Steelers want to do. That's how Mike Tomlin wants to play football. The thing is, they haven't been doing that well in good weather either. So,
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how much we want to lean into that one. But either way, man, I'm doing well. I'm excited to see you this weekend. You're coming up to Marist, so we'll hang out. It'll be a good time. And yeah, overall, I'm doing well. Even though the Steelers, not necessarily doing quite so good, so to speak.
Yeah.
But. The Eagles did do good. So which team do we want to start with today? I guess let's jump into the Steelers first because we also got to break them down later. So let's just get this Steelers game from last week out of the way. Break it down. I got a couple notes on the offense, couple notes on the defense. I'm not going to try to go as long as normal just because I feel like tonight's game is more fresh in my mind right now of stuff I want to talk about. But just looking back at that loss last week against the Jaguars. I mean, we both talked about it going in. The Jaguars are a good football team. They've won, I think it's like 4 or 5 games in a row now, have really kind of taken off a little bit and, kind of elevated themselves to that point where like people were saying, hey, this could be one of the better teams in the AFC. And I think we're starting to see that. But even so, I mean, the Steelers had opportunities early. I think it wasn't great weather in Pittsburgh. So I think that played a part in being able to keep the Jaguars close. But that also played a part in kind of the missed opportunities early on for the Steelers. Deontay Johnson had 2 big drops on the first drive. Now, granted, like I said, it was poor conditions, and the guy actually had a really good game, so I don't want to harp on that too much. But, on top of that, too, it's not just Deontay Johnson there because this team had its first 4 drives were all 3-and-outs. So, that's pretty disappointing. And I mean, honestly, Ricardo, when you come back from what they did against the Rams the week prior in the second half, really kind of, I thought that they were kind of finding themselves on offense. You come back and that's the performance that you have in the first half or your first 4 drives against the Jaguars at home when it's bad weather. It's not, it's not a snowing blizzard or anything here. You should still be able to throw a football in the rain. That's incredibly disappointing. And, I know there's the whole narrative about the penalties, and I'll touch on that a little bit. But, honestly, that's not what I'm trying to hang my hat on with this. Ultimately, this Steelers offense really didn't do anything to make you think they were progressing from the Rams game in this first half. And that was incredibly disappointing because there was an opportunity. Their defense held the Jaguars early.
Yeah, it's just been more of the same, really. It's I mean, how many times are we going to say it? It's just slow starts. There's no rhythm at all. Like, I mean, yeah, you might talk about the Rams game in the second half. That was the only time they looked, competent, I guess. They could string a few drives together, but man, I don't know. It's just the same thing every week, man. I don't know what to tell you differently because it's just there's poor execution, bad play calling. Like, it's just bad all around.
It all adds up, man. And I mean, it's like, I can harp on the fact that the run game sucks, but, part of the reason for that is that this team doesn't stay on the field. They don't convert third downs. So when you're not staying on the field, you're going to have less opportunities to actually run the football. And, I was reading up on it a little bit. This team is for how bad they were at the first half of last year, they're actually worse in pretty much every statistical category running the football the first half of this season compared to the first half of last season. And they added Isaac Sayumalu and Broderick Jones and Darnell Washington in the offseason to try and make this run game better. And it's like, hey, look, I know that Broderick Jones isn't starting right now, but, the knock on him was he was going to take time in the pass protection game. He was supposed to come in and be, a decent run blocker right away, but, they still refused to kind of bring him into the fold and realize he's the future. He could potentially be your future left tackle for the next 10 years. I mean, I'm ready to move on from Dan Moore at this point. I thought maybe by week 4 we'd be moving on, but still they continue to go with him. Darnell Washington, I get that he's not trusted in the pass game, but you'd think that his presence in the run game would yield some better results there. And, I don't know. It's like you said, it's a lot of things. It's bad play calling. It's an inability for the offense to stay on the field and convert third downs. It's an inability for, the run game to, get push and, for the running backs to, actually, get yards after contact too. I think that's part of it. So there's a lot of bad things going on with this offense. And it's just like when a performance is this bad after how well they played in the second half against the Rams, that I was on here saying, hey, this might be the actual point that they turn it around. It's just like, I'm going to stop buying into that narrative.
Yeah, I mean, it's just there's no consistency with it. Like you might see spurts of it here and there, but it's just never, it never plays out for a full, 60 minutes. You just never see it. And it's for me, it's frustrating to see that. I mean, it almost feels like wasted talent. It's like, I'm going to throw Matt Canada under the bus. We've touched on that multiple times. We know he's most likely gone after the season, after his contract expires. But man, it is hard to watch this offense. Seriously, it's brutal, man.
It's extremely brutal, and I'm fine with you throwing Matt Canada under the bus. I mean, he definitely deserves a good portion of the blame in this too. I mean, I don't really have much to comment on, the offense outside of kind of those general, aspects of it. Mitch Trubisky had to come in because Kenny Pickett got hurt. Right now, it's looking like Kenny Pickett's going to play tonight. He's told reporters multiple times he's playing tonight. So I'd be surprised if he doesn't end up suiting up. But when Mitch Trubisky came in, I'll touch on Mitch Trubisky a little bit and stock up, stock down. But it really wasn't good having him in the game either. And ultimately, I guess this is where I'll move to the penalties a little bit, because I feel like Steelers fans are using this as an easy excuse in this game. And Deontay Johnson was vocal about the penalties. Mike Tomlin, there was a clip of him like during the games saying something like, what the bleep is wrong with you guys today, to a referee during the game. But, Mike Tomlin said it in a press conference after the game. He said, we want to be an elite team where penalties don't influence the result. And I mean, that's ultimately what it comes down to. You can blame the penalties all you want. I'm not disputing the fact that they can certainly have an impact on the outcome of games, but like, the penalties aren't necessarily the reason that this offense has been bad for 9 weeks and can't convert third downs and can't run the football and can't find consistency in the passing game. All of these are kind of like the issues that add up on top of them that, penalties can't be an excuse in that stage. And you know what? Mike Tomlin's right when he says elite teams don't let penalties influence games like that, because I'm not even saying the Jaguars are elite. But they had the same amount of penalties as the Steelers in this game, Ricardo, and they had more penalty yards as a result of them. And they didn't let those penalties influence the result of this game. So I don't want to hear anything about these penalties. I get that there could be differing circumstances between when these penalties were called, what kind of were the circumstances going into it. But I'm sorry, that's just a lame duck excuse in my book at this point for how bad this offense has been week after week.
Yeah, you really can't use it as an excuse, like you said. But the one thing I will say about that, I mean, the non-call against Kenny Pickett, I can't remember who it was, which defender kind of drove him into the ground, but resulted in him being injured. I mean, that's one of those where I feel like any other week that's called a roughing the passer, but I
or any other quarterback. I mean, it's fair, dude.
Yeah, that too.
We've seen. There was one that I saw recently. It might have even been it might have even been a Steelers player that just got in directly to the quarterback. I don't remember if I was watching one of the primetime games, but it's like some of those hits you question, like how could they actually go about hitting the quarterback in any other way?
Yeah.
And it's a half a second after the ball comes out, and the defender doesn't even. It was like a slot corner. Didn't even put his weight on the guy. Just knocked him over, and it
Yeah.
was called the roughing the passer. So, and it's not like the hands were up in the face mask or in the helmet or anything like that. So it's such a questionable thing that for them to not hit that, I agree with you. It's questionable. I guess I'm saying more, and maybe I'd be more heated about this if Kenny Pickett, if we were filming this on Monday and Kenny Pickett hadn't said he's all right, he'll be playing this week and whatnot.
Right.
But it is such a thing where week to week it varies, and honestly, the referee crews, I feel like it varies on who you get, what they see, what they call. But again, you just can't let that influence the results of the game or be used as an excuse.
Yeah. One question: did Deontay Johnson get fined for those comments yet, or
that I haven't heard anything that he's been fined. So I mean, I'll definitely keep an eye on that, and if I hear anything, I'll let you know. But as far as I know, I'm surprised, but let me see if I can find out real quick, because you'd think that would be something that could be a finable offense.
Yeah, players have gotten fined for commenting on officiating. I guess while we're on the topic, I just the whole Jalen Warren thing, like
yeah, I haven't. Yeah, that's a good topic to bring up. I haven't seen anything. I just did a little quick search. I haven't seen anything about him getting fined, but yeah, go ahead. Bring up that Jalen Warren point.
Yeah, so he got fined. I mean, what's his paycheck? It's literally the amount that he
I think
got
it's like
fined.
it's like $50K, dude. It's nothing.
Yeah, and so the NFL fined him for, I mean, a very questionable.
Yeah,
Was it even flagged? Like, I don't even know if it was, but
honestly, dude, when I saw that like all of these storylines were coming out against like for Jalen Warren being fined, I didn't know what he was being fined.
yeah,
For.
that's. I was watching the Pat McAfee show yesterday. I was like, well, what? Like, there was one block he had on I think it was against the Rams, right? I think it seemed like a totally legal block. Like, I'm like, all right, well, what's he getting fined for it? And it just looked like a normal football play, like just him in pass protection. He's picking up a blitz. Like,
and he
like,
said like he's not going to change the way he goes about his business on a play like that. Like,
yeah,
even though his game check was literally cut, I think he, after the fine from his game check for that week, it was like the game check was $50K and his fine was like $45K or something like that.
yeah.
So even after only having like $5K coming from that game, he's still like, I'm not going to let that influence like the way that I play the game, which is pretty commendable for a guy who, every snap in the NFL is a blessing for him as an undrafted free agent, trying to make the most of his, opportunity, even though he's, kind of cemented himself with the Steelers at this point. I'm not trying to say anything like that,
yeah.
but I mean, still, you never know when one injury could take it all away from him. I give him props for saying he's still going to go out there and play the way that he knows how to play for something that, again, it's like you don't even understand what he's being fined for.
Yeah, I had to watch it like a few times over. I'm just like, what? I don't even know what happened. Like, what? There was nothing illegal.
JJ Watt said it, very well in a tweet. He was like, "This is despicable by the NFL." I don't remember exactly what the tweet was, but he just said, this is ridiculous. That's the guy's whole game check, essentially. That the NFL is taking away from him for something that nobody really even understands what the penalty is. So it's just a questionable by the NFL there for sure. Let's move on to the defense a little bit. I don't really have a ton to say here, other than they kind of again followed their kind of defensive identity. Man, they've really kind of I think they've. The question of, is their defensive identity sustainable of like forcing these turnovers? I mean, we're halfway through the season and it has been sustainable. Not necessarily always for winning games, but they forced 3 turnovers in this game and the offense just didn't capitalize on any of them. I felt like they did a good job of not letting anybody like go off. Like we've seen at points in the season that either running backs have had a big day against them or a team's number 1 wide receivers, like, Devontae Adams, when he faced them, has had a good day against them. But I feel like all their receivers kind of had solid days. Nobody went off for like 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. Travis Etienne, I think, had like 70 yards in this game, so it wasn't anything crazy. The Jaguars were still able to move the football against them, but the Steelers, they give up yards. There's no like way to really dispute that. you can run against them. Their secondary is definitely vulnerable in certain areas. And the Jaguars were able to move the football, but the Steelers, had a lot of bend but don't break. There was one big explosive touchdown that the Jaguars had to Travis Etienne, where I don't remember which safety it was, because Minka Fitzpatrick was at this point.
I think it was Casey.
I think you're right. I think it was Casey. He tried to kind of jump the pass, and I think Joey Porter Jr. was expecting him to kind of drop back in his zone more. So that allowed the touchdown. But outside of that play, the Jaguars were 0 for 3 in the red zone. The Steelers were able to hold them to 4 field goals, didn't allow any other touchdowns. So it was a lot of bend but don't break, force turnovers, and hope your offense can capitalize on them. And the offense really didn't. I think that's really kind of what their defensive identity is going to be moving forward. And if you continue to see progression from Joey Porter Jr., that helps the DBs even more. Hopefully Minka Fitzpatrick's injury isn't too serious, although he's already out for tonight's game. And now we're getting Cam Hayward back tonight, which could maybe help in the run defense a little bit, that maybe this defense can even get a little bit better than it's been to this point of the season. But overall, I didn't think they really had a bad game. I think it was just, they were on the field so much, especially early on, because their offense couldn't move the football, and they couldn't capitalize on the turnovers they forced.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy how often the defense is on the field and they still find a way to take the ball away, and they're just so good at keeping the offense in the game. It's really hit or miss. It's just, they're always good for a turnover or two, in this case 3, and it's either the Steelers come back and win it, or they just don't. It's just
it's an interesting question, because I feel like they've played bad to a certain extent at this point, as far as they've matched it with the turnovers, but I feel like a big reason why they give up so many yards against the run and they sometimes struggle against these number 1 wide receivers is because they're on the field so much. So I wonder if you were to ask defensive coordinators around the league, you can have any defensive roster that you want to coach, who would you choose? The Jets defense this year, they're not blowing it up statistically. Especially against the run, they're struggling a little bit. But a lot of defensive coordinators, I think, would be yeah, I'll take the talent on that roster and I'll coach them up. They'll be, better than they are there. I wonder if defensive coordinators around the league would be man, I'd take that Steelers talent. Their offense just doesn't give them any help at all. They'd be a really top-notch group if they had that help. I wonder where they would kind of fall in that sort of category. So I don't know, just somewhere my train of thought is going.
Yeah, I mean, you got TJ Watt on the front and end of that. So, and then getting Cam Hayward back, Minka Fitzpatrick great on the back end when he's healthy. But yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't know.
Just from a strict personnel standpoint, how did defensive coordinators around the league view them? But
yeah,
I don't know. I guess we'll see. And I'll save the injuries for when we start to break down the Titans game a little bit. But this defense has performed well. And, it's going to be interesting to see how these injuries, both guys lost and guys coming back, kind of influences them going forward. But that's pretty much all I have from this game. Unless you have anything else you want to touch on, I think we can move on to the Eagles.
No, I don't. I think you've said everything for the most part.
Yeah.
All right.
So yeah, let's hit the Eagles here. What were some of kind of your main takeaways from this game? They're kind of a shootout win against the Commanders. I don't think really many people expected it all going into this one.
No, I certainly didn't. But I kind of alluded to it last week when I said it was oh yeah, and then the first game, the Commanders were coming off a game where Sam Howell got sacked 9 times. The same sort of scenario kind of played out. Sam Howell got sacked 6 times against the Giants last week, and then turned it into a shoot. I don't know. Maybe Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coordinator of the Commanders, just has Sean Desai's number. I don't know. Maybe he's just it seems.
It's interesting because it even goes back to last year a little bit,
Yeah.
When none of these coordinators were in place, but and the Commanders still gave them trouble to a certain extent.
And even in the Super Bowl, you could argue, even if it was Jonathan Gannon, the Chiefs moved the ball. In the second half, at least, they moved it. They was pretty much scoring every drive. But in this case, yeah, it was tough to watch the defense out there. It was, again, Sam Howell looked like Patrick Mahomes. I'm going to keep saying that. I don't know what it is about Sam Howell playing well against the Eagles defense. It's so odd to me. It was more of the same from back when they played in week 4. It was just like quick passes, get it out quick, and
Yeah.
They did play more press coverage, but it seemed like
there was a lot of throws over the middle too. He was constantly finding Logan Thomas over the middle of the tight end, and also Jahan Dotson had a career day for them. I feel like he had a lot of catches over. I mean, I don't want to take anything away from Terry McLaurin. He still had 5 catches in this game, but they just weren't going outside to him a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, James Bradbury got burned on that one touchdown he allowed to McLaurin. I mean, it's concerning. I will say that it doesn't help the secondary when this was like the 8th different starting secondary. It's kind of difficult to be on the same page. There were some miscommunications on the back end, and hopefully with fewer injuries to the secondary and more playing time together, that can sort of those will kind of disappear. And and I don't know, maybe they play better as a unit on the back end, but it's kind of tough to watch the secondary, especially when you consider the players there: Darius Slay, James Bradbury. Bradbury's having a much worse year than last year. I mean, he's allowing on this season an 100 passer rating when he's targeted. So
wow,
that's not a good sign.
No,
yeah, but
not what you want there. Not what you want there.
Especially after you brought him back. But in any case, Kevin Byard, I don't know if we even talked. Did this trade happen?
So I was gonna bring this up at one point and just get you, because this definitely happened midweek after we filmed our last episode.
Okay.
But what I mean, if you want to touch on, I mean, I have some things I'd like to say about just Sam Howell and stuff, but let's save Kevin Byard for 1 second. I want to touch on Sam Howell and just this game a little bit more. So I mean, the thing with Sam Howell too in this one that I find so interesting, and maybe we're going to get into this a little bit, but it's the fact that Eric Bieniemy also just doesn't love to run the ball so much, and really airs it out with Sam Howell a lot of the time. Yeah. And I guess to a certain extent that's good, that's bad, whatever. The thing that I find so fascinating about it though is he was the most sacked quarterback in the league coming into this game. The Eagles only got 1 sack on him. And it's also the fact, I don't know if they changed the game plan a lot compared to the week prior, but the fact that the week before this, they played the Giants and lost 14-7, only scoring 1 time. So it's how is it such a drastic turnaround in that short amount of time? Isn't that bizarre to you? Is there any way to explain that?
No, I think, they just changed their game plan, made it so that Sam Howell wouldn't hold on to the ball long. I mean, that's kind of that's sort of what they did anyway in the first place in week 4. But what are the combined stats? It's 680 passing yards against the Eagles, 5 passing touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean Sam Howell threw for 400 yards this week after not being able to move the football against an inept Giants defense.
I don't understand that at all. It really makes no sense to me. I mean, one thing I'll point out, Sidney Brown, who, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Sidney Brown, and he was amazing in run support as a run defender. I mean, he laid a huge hit. I think it was on Terry McLaurin at one point. That was fun to see, but he's definitely still a work in progress in coverage. They used him a lot more in the slot, which I'm not sure they're going to stick with that this week, especially if CeeDee Lamb is going to be lining up there in the slot. But it was just, there's just so many different players playing different positions, and it's never a set group of players. Last year, for the most part healthy on the back end, especially, but this year, really, this season, it's just been player after player having to fill in for injuries, or players getting shipped out like Edmonds, or bringing players in like Kevin Byard, which I guess I could touch on a little bit right now.
Yeah, why don't you touch on that now? I think that'll lead. We'll talk about Byard, and that'll lead into another point I want to ask you. So yeah, why don't you just touch on your thoughts on Byard, the trade overall, and how you thought he did? I know it was a quick turnaround, but I think he did play in this game, right?
He played 100% of the snaps. That's crazy.
That's insane.
How? I don't understand that. He just came to Philly. in case people don't know, the Eagles traded for Kevin Byard in exchange for, I mean, pretty much Terrell Edmonds and 2024 fifth and sixth round picks. I mean, that's kind of a steal when you're getting a veteran like him who's, I think he has another year left after this, but still, that's you get a really experienced starter at safety, and that was a position that was always the biggest question mark coming into the season. And I mean, he in this game he had, I mean, he was okay. He wasn't great, but what would you really expect going into this game, especially his first game and only been in Philly for about a week or so, and having to learn Sean Desai's playbook and still somehow playing every single snap is incredible to me. So I'll give him credit for that. But long term wise, I hope this helps settle down the secondary a bit more. And he's also I don't think he's missed a game also, so he's durable. That's going to be huge going forward. So that's I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, man. I mean, I like it. I mean, I think it's a clear upgrade over Evans. I mean, I've talked in the past about Evans. Like, he's a solid player. He's not going to do anything special. You thought maybe in an increased role in Philadelphia, he could kind of rise to that next level. But I think you saw he's just like he's a nice safety in the NFL. He's nothing that's going to just absolutely, change a secondary, so to speak. And Kevin Byard is a player that's got, some serious NFL experience, a serious veteran presence. And, I think along with, it is a young safety room with, Reed Blankenship and Sidney Brown that, having him there, I think helps them in that way. And I think it also helps to the certain extent of just, helping Darius Slay and James Bradbury, just in the secondary overall. And you've talked about how Bradbury struggled this year. So if his presence can help him, kind of settle down a little bit and refine his form, I do that trade any day of the week. I give up those picks any day of the week.
Yeah, that was a steal. I think Dan Graziano, I think is how you pronounce his name, who said that Howie Roseman, the Eagles were the biggest trade deadline winners, even though it happened last week. But I mean, that kind of just shows you, Howie Roseman's, he's not going to settle for what he has. He is always going to try and find a way to add more talent to this team. So I'll give him credit there. He's been doing that for years. That's just his thing. It's a Howie Roseman thing, man.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, touching on Jordan Blankenship too, he had that. I think it was his first interception of the season, right? I mean, that was that interception. That was kind of a turning point of the game in my mind.
I was going to say, the only real silver lining from the defensive standpoint was that interception, which was, it seemed like McLaurin, it went right through McLaurin's hands, but and it was slightly overthrown, maybe you might argue, but I mean, I think the Eagles took the lead. Yeah, they took the lead. It was 24-24 at that point. The Eagles scored on that drive, make 31-24. Then Hassan Reddick had the only sack of the game, which I feel like he's been coming up with really big sacks and in big moments. And he had that one on the second to last Commanders drive, a strip sack on I believe it was 4th and 5, 4th and 6. And that pretty much sealed the game for the Eagles, even though it still was kind of not over at the end. DeAndre Swift scored, which
what do you make of the fact? I mean, Ricardo, I touched on this. Like, one sack against the most sacked quarterback in the NFL coming into the game. And this was a team that was on a historic tear last year as far as getting to the quarterback. Like, it just hasn't been the same this year. Look, I know Reddick's not having a bad year. Josh Sweat's not really, having a bad year. I don't know if you could really point to anybody on the defensive line and be like, oh, like they're just having such a worse year than last year. Just, is there a reason they're not getting to the quarterback as much? I mean, do you think it's just, Sean Desai's scheme versus Jonathan Gannon's scheme? What do you think it is as to why they're just not racking up the sacks at the rate they did last year?
No, I think it's just teams have adjusted to, and at least have learned to respect the pass rushers the Eagles have. Yeah, losing Javon Hargrave was always going to be a big thing, but I just think, I mean, like they're still getting pressures, like they're still getting hits. I think they're top 10 in both those stats. So I don't think it's just for some reason they're not finishing as much, and that just might be because the quarterbacks are getting the ball out faster. They're also just playing better quarterbacks, generally speaking. Last year, I mean, they didn't really play anyone all that good during the regular season. So I think it's more just offenses kind of scheming better, not having Hassan Reddick wreck games, and I think Hassan Reddick's actually on a better track right now than he at like this point.
Yeah. And
Than
that's
last
I guess
season.
that's what I'm trying to say is it's like the numbers as a team aren't necessarily there, but it's not like guys are having bad seasons, you know? That's
Yeah,
what's kind of
exactly.
odd about it.
Yeah, it's a little odd. I mean, it doesn't help that the secondary has also kind of been banged up throughout the entire portion of the season. So
Yeah.
that's a part of it too, I would say.
Yeah. Also
Um,
fair.
yeah, I guess I'll just move to the offense quickly. And
Yeah, sure.
um, I mean, Jalen Hurts with a bone bruise in his knee. He actually walked off, I think yesterday. He finished his press conference when someone asked him about his knee, like, "Oh, how's it feeling?" He's just like, "I don't want to put up with it." He walked out. But that tells you he's fine. Like, he might be hurting still, but like, just he doesn't want to hear the questions. He's gonna play through it regardless. But he had what 315 passing. Or he had 4 passing touchdowns, a 138 passer rating. That was probably his best game since the Commanders game, funny enough. But AJ Brown, I have to point this out, obviously, the first receiver to have 6 straight games with 125 plus receiving yards.
Dude,
And
he's insane, bro.
I mean, it really is. I don't, uh, man,
There was the one play
so
in this game,
interesting.
man. There was the one play in this game where there was the pass interference. He was going for a contested catch in double coverage,
Yeah,
going for a touchdown, and I was surprised he didn't come down with it, man. I mean, like
I know.
he's that good, dude. Is he the best receiver in football?
I mean, right now, because he's this hot, I would say, yeah. I would say right now he
I mean,
is.
who are your? You don't have to put them in order, but just who are your top 3 wide receivers in football?
I mean, I have to put Tyreek up there. Um, I mean, if Justin Jefferson were healthy, he'd be up there for sure. But uh,
Because
I don't know.
that's what I have. That's what I'd probably say are my top 3 right now. Is again not in order, but AJ Brown, Tyreek Hill, and even though Justin Jefferson is hurt, I know what he is and what he's going
Yeah,
to be when he gets healthy.
exactly. So I'd say those 3. But I mean, it's hard to argue that he's not the best right now at this very moment in time. I mean, there's even talks about him potentially being an MVP candidate, which I don't
Yeah.
think is really going to happen, if I'm being honest. I don't think a receiver has won it ever.
No, I mean, I remember back in like 2015, Antonio Brown made it to like week
Yeah.
14 and was still in the conversation.
Yeah.
And that was like the first time everybody was like, oh man, he may actually do it. And then he got hurt like the last 2 games of the season.
Yeah.
But I think it's a little bit too early to really start that conversation.
Yeah. I'm like, nah, let's taper those expectations. Let's chill out with those. But I mean, it's crazy the 2 touchdowns he had. The first one was a back shoulder throw from Hurts, and then just one hand stab, and somehow came down with. They got his shin down, and I don't even know, man. Like he just makes those look so easy. They're just so routine for him. Like it's and the second one, the second receiving touchdown in double coverage too. Like
Yeah.
dude just turned around, went up for it, and like it's ridiculous. um, it's yeah. I mean, this dude is what 939 receiving yards. He's second in the NFL. So I mean, in terms of the passing game overall, I'm pretty encouraged by what I've seen. Again, the turnovers, just an issue. 2 red zone turnovers, both of them inside the 5. You can't be doing that every single week. Like it's just bad. You can't do like Kenneth Gainwell, especially. I still don't understand why we're running him in the red zone. Use DeAndre Swift, use Boston Scott. I'm gonna keep saying that until they eventually figure that out. I just Kenneth Gainwell had what 2 carries for -4 yards and a fumble. Like that,
Yeah.
really? Like I don't know. I mean, his playing time did go down, which I mean, fair enough. I'm kind of glad. Not that he's a bad player. It's just
Yeah.
as a runner, he's not the best out of the 3, and using him in those high leverage situations just doesn't make sense. Hopefully, they figure that out sooner or later. But
I'm with you
man,
on that, man. I'm with you
yeah,
on that. I mean, I think, yeah, it's just like I get why it's frustrating. And I mean, it's like, it's not something you bring up in a game like this. But again, I felt like there was a couple of like third down play calls that I was like, that seems a little bit conservative. And I feel like that's starting to
yeah,
become a narrative to a certain extent. But I mean, that's something I'm going to have my eye on a little bit more going forward. But again, when you win scoring 38 points and your quarterback throws 4 touchdowns, that's not going to be a main topic of conversation.
Yeah, I think at this point last season, the offense wasn't as good yardage wise. Turnover wise, they were obviously much better. But I mean, you got to give some credit to Brian Johnson, the offensive coordinator, Nick Sirianni. They're still, I mean, Eagles offense still one of the very best in the league.
Well, yeah, and let me ask you this question, man. That's kind of perfect because I feel like the 49ers are on a 3-game losing streak. The Chiefs just lost an ugly game to the Broncos. We don't really know what the Bills are. They've been very inconsistent. The Bengals are still kind of hanging down and out. The Lions are kind of unproven, and they've got an easy schedule going forward. Like, are the Eagles the best team in football right now?
If turnovers weren't an issue for them, then they would be. I still think it's the Chiefs because defensively they've gotten better, and it's Mahomes. I know he had the flu and it was snowing in Denver or whatever, but like still, it's I would say the Chiefs, they're defending champs. The Eagles are probably second best at this point in time. If they could clean up the turnovers, that'd be nice. Then I'd put them at 1. But I mean, yeah, they do have the best record in the league. That doesn't really mean much to me. It only matters when you beat the best teams. So I put them at 2. I put the Eagles at 2, Chiefs 1 still. But
fair enough. I think they're definitely up there, man. And I think they're starting to just show you week in and week out. Like, not only can they beat teams in a multitude of ways, but like, I mean, I guess that's exactly it, man. They can be high octane when they need to. They can slow it down and run the football when they need to. I mean, their defense can kind of win games for them if they need to. They've just done it in so many different ways this season.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been good. It's been good to this point. Yeah, like you said, best record in football at the moment.
Yeah, that's all I have on that game.
Sounds good, man. Well, let's get into stock up, stock down a little bit. I'll start. We'll go back to the Steelers. Stock up, I've got 2 guys. The first one is Deontay Johnson. I know that I kind of lamented and called him out for the 2 drops on the first drive of the game, but after that point, he had 8 receptions for 85 yards, 14 targets, so he was getting the ball thrown to him a lot of the times. And he should have had his first TD since 2021. He was wide open in the end zone. Look, I know people said that he maybe slipped and that was the reason he didn't catch it. I think that was more on Kenny Pickett and a timing issue than anything else. So he also made some really tough catches in this game. I thought he had a good game, and this is his second week back from the hamstring injury, and I think he's just showing you how important a player he is and how good a wide receiver he is. So he gets one of my stock ups, and my other stock up, it goes to Chris Boswell. I haven't really given him his flowers yet this season. He's been super reliable. He's been really good this season, and in this game, he had a career-long field goal, 61 yards in the rain at an incredibly hard stadium in Acrisure Stadium to kick at. So I give both of those guys my stock ups this week.
Yeah, I like that. I didn't think about Chris Boswell as a stock up, but yeah, that's I like your reasoning for that. And I also had Deontay Johnson as mine for stock.
Okay, word. Glad we're on the same page there. And then stock down, I have another wide receiver. George Pickens, man. I mean, I got to give him a stock down. I mean, his stock's been up for a couple weeks, but we only had 1 catch. Granted, it was it was a nice play. He hurdled the guy to get a touchdown. But my issue is what was that?
No, I said that was pretty sick. I mean,
yeah, that play was. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, that play was awesome. But again, that was his only catch on the day. You can't be invisible for whole games. Now, I get part of this is probably on the play calling and designing him open, and also part of it's on the backup quarterback being in for half of this game. But especially with Deontay Johnson back and you not facing as tough of coverages, like, you need to be able to find a way to have a bigger impact on the game than what he had in this contest. And, I think it's natural when he's had so many good games in a row these past couple weeks that I'm going to bring his stock down a little bit here after this performance. My other stock down was Trubisky. He had the bad interception that he threw into triple coverage that I felt was really a turning point in this game and kind of gave a lot of the momentum to the Jaguars. And at that point, even though it wasn't over, it felt like, all right, like this game may be trending towards a loss. Like that was the first point I kind of felt that. He had 2 interceptions total. His QBR was just 28.4, a passer rating of just 51.2. So just a really lackluster performance coming in for Kenny Pickett off the bench, man. I've never been high on Trubisky. From last year, I was constantly, kind of out on him. And I'm glad that I don't have to watch him in this game tonight, and Kenny Pickett's going to play. So he gets my other stock down.
Yeah, I just want to go back to Pickens for a sec. I mean, this was one of the I think it was top 10 worst passing defenses. The secondary wasn't very good from the Jaguars, and they only had 1 catch, right? I think it was
one catch, I think
and it was
just
like the touchdown.
15 yards in the touch. It was the touchdown catch,
you would have expected more for a player of his caliber, especially against this secondary. But and then Trubisky, what you're gonna get with him really at this point.
Yeah, I mean he's a carbon cut, backup quarterback that you really don't want in there for anything more than kind of a game like that where your quarterback gets hurt, and it's like if you have to run an extended period of 3, 4, 5 games with him, coming in for a quarterback that's got a serious injury, you're going to start feeling like Zach Wilson and the Jets, a similar situation.
Yeah, pretty much.
So what about you? What do you have for stock up, stock down for the Eagles?
For my stock up, the 2 most obvious ones, Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown. Do I really need to go into more detail? I've already said.
No, you don't. You don't. I mean, I don't know how much higher AJ Brown stock can really go at this point.
Yeah, I know it's hard not to put him up.
I mean, at this point, AJ Brown is just Apple as far as stock goes, where it's like, hey, it may have some dips, but if you're investing a chunk of change in it, you're going to be good in the long term. Like it's eventually going to grow.
Yeah,
I don't remember what the term is for that, but it's one of those long-term stocks that you just don't have to sweat. It's never gonna really turn bad for you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, fingers crossed that it never goes bad. But but I will say for Jalen Hurts, playing on that bad knee, I will give him credit there. I feel like I didn't really talk much about that, but he deserves credit for really. I mean, he's a tough dude. That's not what I'm concerned about at all. But still playing through, that's not easy. So
this was one of his better games of the season too, Ricardo.
Yeah,
didn't have an interception. And you talked about it, the 4 TDs and the 300 yards passing. So
I think this was his second 4 touchdown pass performance in his career. So pretty darn good day for him. Stock down. I'm just gonna.
Whoa! I'm sorry, I didn't realize that was it for your stock up. I'm curious. I'm curious if you had this guy in there because. I feel like he didn't really show up. Again, I couldn't watch the game. I was at work. But, just watching the highlights and reading, I feel like Nakobe Dean had a good game. And, you can kind of hope that he can get back. I mean, at least he showed up in the box score, but maybe you feel differently.
He was good against the run. Absolutely. That I'll give him. Against the pass, not so much. It's tough because I love watching him play. He's like flying all over the field, but I guess his size is sort of an issue when it comes to being in coverage against, especially tight ends. That's that's a pretty big mismatch. Well, I believe he's 5'11", so but that's just you can't really change that. You can't change his height. That's just I guess he has to figure out how to better position himself. To make plays defensively against the pass, but I don't know. He did play well. At least I just not
he showed up in the box score. There's a difference between that and obviously you watched him and looked at it a bit more closely than I was able to. But
but I feel like he is hopefully getting. Going to stay healthy the rest of the season. I know he'll get better. I feel like he will. He's just got to stay healthy.
Yeah, he's got to be on the field to really get better. So I'm with you there. What do you have for stock down?
So I'm just kind of grouping these together. The secondary, that's just as a whole. I kind of already touched on that too. But hopefully that group can stay together, stay healthy as long as possible. Really, there's nothing else I can really say about that.
Yeah, I mean, this defensive line has been good, especially the strides they've taken stopping the run. That you just hope that the secondary can kind of get back to a semblance of what it was last year when it could really take over games.
Yeah. And then my second one I'll say is the running game, which I put them in stock down just because it hasn't been very efficient the last 3 weeks. I mean, they only had 59 rushing yards in this game on 22 attempts, 2.7 yards per carry. But like for the most part, they've been sticking with the passing game. They've been more aggressive on first and second down, which that's fine. But when teams have really good secondaries, say like the Cowboys, it's not. I'm not expecting them. Well, I expect them to run the ball a bit more. Is kind of my point. But and in the last 3 games, they've only averaged 3.1 yards per carry. They haven't eclipsed 100 yards since the Rams in Week 5. Again, it's not. I'm not overly worried about it, but they definitely could lean more on the run game, especially with Hurts kind of dealing with a knee injury. So take some pressure off him, maybe. I don't know. That's just my take.
Yeah. No, I think that's also very, very valid. So that's stock up, stock down. Let's move into these game previews now, and let's start with what we have tonight. Steelers, second game of a 3-game homestand against the Tennessee Titans. First thing I got to talk about in this matchup, man, is the injuries. I feel like there's a lot of moving parts with the injuries going into this one. Obviously, Kenny Pickett dealing with the rib injury. He says he'll play tonight. I believe him. I mean, he's told reporters multiple times I'd be really surprised if he's not out there starting. So I'm kind of going under the assumption he's going to be the quarterback tonight. Cameron Hayward, he was a full participant the final 2 days of practice, and then yesterday was activated to the active roster. So that could potentially be a huge boost for this run defense that, we'll get into that in a second. Minkah Fitzpatrick, he's out. Levi Wallace, limited participant in practice, I believe, yesterday. So, again, I don't know if that's necessarily as big of a blow because he hasn't really had a great season. But Cameron Hayward, getting him back is the big one. Obviously, Minkah Fitzpatrick hurts losing him in the secondary. But, this makes me point right to the run defense. Cam Hayward, first game back, let's see how this, impacts going up against Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry's had a solid year. The Titans overall have kind of been middle of the pack running the football. So I think that this is going to be a super interesting matchup to watch of. Is this Steelers run defense? Do they actually take a noticeable step forward with Cam Hayward back in the fold? And they're also doing it against one of the premier running backs in the NFL, even if the Titans offensive line isn't as good as it's been in years past.
Yeah, I mean, this offense overall, I feel like, you really, really got to hone in on Derrick Henry and the rushing attack, because I feel like that's really what their offense is. That's kind of what it's based off of. It opens up play action and kind of neutralizes the pass rush for defenses, really. So if they can make the offense one-dimensional, then and I think get pressure on Will Levis, who's only going to be playing in his second game, and he's a rookie too. So if you can speed up his clock to make him sort of, put the game in his hands essentially. So and now the Steelers have film on him from the week before, and I'm sure they've gone back to his college days and looked at some of that stuff. But you really you can't let Derrick Henry run away with this game. Like it's just, I feel like that's the biggest part, the biggest thing to look at, just from a defensive standpoint.
Yeah, you touched on Will Levis, and I think it's interesting because, like you referenced, he does have the tape from last week, but there's not a lot there. But, even that being said, Derrick Henry had a solid game last week, and I think that definitely allowed him to kind of be more comfortable back there throwing the football. Maybe the Steelers, could learn from that, hey, you get the running game really going. But again, we talked about that. That's a bigger prize. It's easier said than done, maybe. But anyway, so yeah, I'm with you. Make them one-dimensional, and then you really have to see, if the game plan is stop the Titans' rushing attack and see if Will Levis can beat you. I'm fully open for that being the route. But again, I think it's also kind of a bigger ask than easier said than done as far as stopping the run game because of how bad the Steelers have been against the run.
Yeah.
the Steelers, yeah, I mean, I think that the line of scrimmage is really going to be what I'm going to watch in this one as far as the Steelers' defensive side of the football.
Yeah. I mean,
I also wouldn't mind a nice like sack in the first, drive or two against the Titans to really kind of like, I don't want this to sound bad, but make Will Levis think the next time that TJ Watt's lined up around the edge. Get one of those sacks early and have it just be in the back of his mind the rest of the game.
Yeah, set the tone. And also, I just want to say this: DeAndre Hopkins is dealing with a toe injury. He's going to play, but I mean, outside of him, who do you really think is going to beat you? Like Westbrook?
Nobody. But again, Ricardo, that's the big thing I've talked about over and over again. Don't let that number one receiver have the big game either.
Yeah.
That's something that I'll definitely have my eye on as well. Now that you bring that up, that's definitely something to watch out for. Another aspect of this game that I kind of find interesting, kind of along that same line of what I'm talking about, set the tone with maybe an early sack or something. Andre Dillard, former Eagle, is one of the tackles there. He has allowed the most sacks this year of any tackle in football. So
yeah,
man, I hope that's a good recipe for success. And I think this just hems even more on what I'm saying as far as the defensive success. It's going to be at the line of scrimmage there. Who dominates the line of scrimmage? The Steelers' defense or the Titans' offensive line? And their run game and just protecting Will Levis. So, I guess I'll talk about the offense a little bit with Kenny Pickett back. I don't really have a lot. It's so hard because we've seen so little from this offense that I can be like, here's what we can do to, beat the Titans defense. It's like, do anything on offense, anything productive, and I'll be happy with it. I mean, if Kenny Pickett's healthy, Ricardo, I mean, there's still like a sliver of hope in me that this rushing attack can find what it had last year. There's a sliver of hope in me that if the rushing attack can find what it had last year, that Kenny Pickett can get the ball out to all these talented receivers and that it can be just some sort of semblance of solid football. I mean, this team is now dead last in yards on offense after last week's performance, Ricardo. And just anything on offense, I feel like I can't really ask for more from the Steelers in this game on offense.
Yeah, there's not really much to say about that other than just find a way to score points in any way that you can. Last week they only scored 3 points off 3 turnovers. Like you can't expect to win games like that. So if the defense gets you a turnover or two, you got to capitalize off those. If just find a way, man. Find a way to put up points. Like offensively.
And this Ricardo, I'll tell you this right now. This game against the Titans and next week against the Packers, probably going to make or break the Steelers season.
Yes.
Based on how their schedule unfolds the rest of the way. They have a really tough close to the season. They have some tough road games. I mean, when you're kind of gifted with 3 games at home like this against, now two subpar teams in the Titans and the Packers, these are huge games. And especially this game against the Titans, because you're going to have extra time to prepare against a bad Packers team. Like you have to find this is like the way that they found ways to win games in the past this season against the Ravens, against the Browns. Like you have to find a way to win this football game tonight. I think it's going to be an ugly game. Thursday night football. Yes. You oftentimes don't see teams really fully prepared. Mike Tomlin, I just really hope that they can find a way to just muster out a win one way or another. And maybe it's even something I hate to say this is something that I could look for on offense, but just keep it close and have some more of that Kenny Pickett magic in the fourth quarter, man.
Yeah, maybe it does come down to that, dude. It's I kind of expect this to be like the Giants-Jets game.
That's a great. Let's get into kind of what we expect of this game and make our predictions on it as well. So last week, we were both right in having the Steelers losing and not being able to cover the spread against the Jaguars. So this week, Pittsburgh is a 2.5-point favorite at home against Tennessee. So what do you make of this game, Ricardo? You were kind of starting to allude to it a little bit. You see Jets versus Giants vibes. What's your kind of take on this one?
Initially I had 16-13 where it's just field goal galore, but I mean, I'm going to stick with that, and I'm going to say Boswell kicks a game-winning field goal, just like in the Jets game.
So what do you have for the score?
16-13, so the Steelers cover the spread, okay. I believe. Yeah.
Well, Ricardo, I hate to like twin with you, but I also see this going a very similar way where I do think that again, the Steelers got to find a way to win this. I'm going to ride with them in this game. You know, I had Chris Boswell, dude. I literally before you even said this, I had Chris Boswell was my stock up this week. Let's have him kick the game winner or something, man. Some Kenny Pickett magic. I'll do the score differently. I think it's going to be, I'll say let's do something nuts. Let's do
Give me
let's
like a
not get too
12.
crazy actually.
Give me a
I'll do 17 no, I'll do 18. I'll do 18 to 15. I'll do 18 to 15 Steelers cover the spread.
Okay.
Just to be different. I don't know how the Steelers are going to get to those 18 points.
I mean, they might get
15 for the Titans. Again, I think it's going to be a lot of bend but don't break. You know, the Titans may get, a touchdown. And then from there, I don't know, dude, but screw it. 18-15, Steelers are covering the spread. And yeah, man, I mean, that's what I'm going to write. I'm with you though. I mean, like we've seen a lot of these Thursday night games be ugly. I feel like I was actually looking into these Thursday night games a little bit last week. These Thursday night games are either really ugly or it's one team just kind of runs away with it and blows out the other team.
Yeah.
So I just don't see that being the way this goes in either direction. So I'm going to ride with that. Steelers cover 18-15. You have the Steelers covering 16-13. We both have Boswell with the game winner. So
I like that. Put money
sounds
on
good, man. Let's get into this. Let's get into this big Eagles game against the Cowboys. Ricardo, it doesn't get bigger than this. Big division rivalry game between these two teams. Both teams, some of the best in the NFC. Eagles would carry a lot of momentum if they can win it going into their bye. What are you looking for in this matchup?
Oh boy. There's a lot to look for in this game. I'm going to try and, not pick out every single thing, but offensively, I think it's going to be much more difficult, passing the ball and like airing it out just like they have been in recent weeks. So I think they're going to have to rely a bit more on the run game. And I will say Cam Jurgens, his window has been open. So there's a chance he plays this week, which would be absolutely huge for the rushing. I mean, just generally. I mean, I think Sua Peta he's been okay. He's been serviceable, kind of what you expect from a backup guard, but clearly the weakness of this offensive line. So if you get Cam Jurgens back in any sort of capacity, that would be a huge boost. Maybe that's part of the reason why the run game hasn't been as good. Maybe because Cam Jurgens has been out. So if you have him in there, maybe it improves a little bit. I just the biggest thing for me is, however way you put it, you just can't turn the ball over. Like I feel like, again, I've been saying this every single week. It's like you can't give Dak Prescott a short field. Dak Prescott struggles when he's trailing. I mean, you saw that against the Niners. He plays much better. I think Stephen A. Smith pointed this out. He's like, Dak Prescott plays as a different quarterback almost when he has a lead or it's tied. So you can't be giving the ball away and you can't be giving him short field. And especially with this defense that has, I mean, so many really, really good players. You start with Micah Parsons, obviously. And you really have to game plan around him. And I feel like in the last two games last season, the Eagles schemed around him pretty well. I don't think he had much of an impact until I can't remember who got injured. Someone got injured last year. Then it kind of went downhill. But if you can keep Micah Parsons in check, then I think you'll have a better shot of running the ball and just kind of airing it out a bit. But I will say it's not going to be easy with these corners. Deron Bland has 4 interceptions. 3 of those have been pick sixes, which is crazy. He's also allowed the lowest passer rating in the league. Stephon Gilmore is also still pretty good. He's allowed a sub 60 rating, sub 60 passer rating. So, I mean, those 2 corners alone are really good. So the Devontae Smith and, AJ Brown, that matchup is going to be really fascinating to watch. But I think you're going to have to lean on the run game, get DeAndre Swift involved, just pound the rock, just out physical the Cowboys front. I mean, they've been able to in the past. So But it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a war.
I think that's super. I think that's super interesting what you say about the turnover battle because the Eagles have given away. They're up there in the top 10 of giveaways. They have 13 on the season, whereas the Cowboys are tied for, or actually they're in third for the least amount of giveaways, which is 7. So that could potentially be a big swinging point in this game. And I think you're also right. It's like, can you kind of keep Micah Parsons hemmed in, because I feel like some teams have started to do that well. I mean, you haven't really seen him have like these big blowout games like he had early on in the season. So if you can find a way to kind of keep him hemmed in, and I'm just excited to see too, like can AJ Brown keep this going on, kind of a big spotlight game here. You're in the 425 window at home against your rival Cowboys. I'm super fascinated to see if he can kind of like, take advantage of some of these corners that you've laid out who are, having solid seasons in Gilmore and Bland, but AJ Brown, like we've said, one of the best receivers in football.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to let AJ Brown win this game. They're not going to let him take over. They can't.
Yeah, I mean, that's easier said than done, man.
I
mean,
know.
How many weeks in a row now? I wouldn't put it past him if he has another big game, man.
Okay, but I think the Cowboys secondary is much better than the Commanders, than who else they played. The Jets, you might argue too. I mean, all those other teams. This is probably the best defense that they're going to face the entire season so far. So, I mean, Jaron Kearse is good. Donovan Wilson's good. Like the back end's definitely much better than a lot of the teams the Eagles have played. So, I think they can figure out a way to limit him at least a little bit. That doesn't mean I don't think he won't score. I think he might still find his way in the end zone at some point, but realistically speaking, like this has to come to an end at some point, right? Like this streak, he might still get like 80 yards or something, but I think Hurts is going to have to rely more on Dallas Goedert, Devontae Smith. The other thing that's kind of worrying me is like I don't want. It almost feels like the offense is, or I guess Jalen Hurts, the offense, however you want to put it, is a bit too reliant on AJ Brown. I don't know if any. I'm just from watching games, it's just like you're throwing a lot to him, which is fine and all, but and Devontae Smith,
that's an interesting thing to keep an eye on, of like if they actually do find a way to kind of take him out of the game to a certain extent. How well are the Eagles able to adjust to that and find these other receivers? I mean, do you see the run game being a big factor for the Eagles with or without Juergens? I mean, could you see them leaning on that?
I think they have to, regardless. I just think they do. They got to wear out the defense, make them. I mean, make them work on defense. Just try and be more physical in defensive line. I think they can be. It's going to be really evenly matched, but I just trust this offensive line to get it done when it's all said and done, really. But that offensively, that's what I'm looking for. And then defensively, man, I mean, CeeDee Lamb's obviously the biggest threat. There's no question about that. I mean, and he lines up more in the slot, so it'll be interesting to see if it's James Bradbury in the slot, and then, I mean, maybe Eli Ricks on the other side and moving outside. I mean, Darius Slay is obviously going to be on one side of the field, but you can't let CeeDee Lamb, take over this game either. He might not be having the best season, but he's still a really good receiver. So, and the Cowboys' best option, Michael Gallup's still solid. Brandon Cook's still solid, but hopefully with another week of practice and preparation, amongst the 4 in the back end, they'll be better and there won't be as many miscommunications or busted coverages. But
CeeDee Lamb is the one that can kind of blow a game open.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the Cowboys they're going to have Tyron Smith back, their left tackle. He was dealing with a neck stinger. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if he's fully healthy and if Josh Sweat can maybe take advantage if he's not fully healthy. But again, I think the advantage really, goes to Hassan Reddick on the left side, going up against what's his name? Give me a second. Terrence Steele, who's fine, but I think Reddick's a much better player than Terrence Steele is. But again, it's a battle of the trenches again, and just there's so many star players on both sides of the ball for both teams, but you cannot lose this one. This is at home, and
And it carries so much weight going into the bye, man.
Yeah, exactly. It'll feel much different winning this game as opposed to losing it, and especially being in Philly at the link in front of your crowd, like you just gotta win it, man.
I don't know if you touched on this, but did you say, have you heard at all a status update on Jalen Carter?
Oh, he was a full participant in practice, so he should be he should be okay. He should play hopefully more than last week. But the other thing, Jordan Davis, who's still dealing with the hamstring injury, he was limited in practice yesterday. I mean, clearly this front four is better with him in the lineup, especially against the run. There was the one long run that the Eagles allowed last week against Ryan Robinson, and Jordan Davis wasn't in that play.
Yeah, man, I think he's kind of the most underrated player. I think you can make the case he's the most underrated player on the Eagles defense. I mean, he just brings this run defense to another level.
I mean, he doesn't move. You can't move him. The dude is literally an anchor. Like it's, and then the others around him are just kind of feeding off of that. So I think
that's going to be a big hole to fill if he can't go this week.
I know. I think he will go. It's just a matter of to what capacity. But it's a lot of matchups, fascinating ones to watch. But I don't know. Should we move on to predictions then?
Let's do some predictions. Yeah. I can start this one. Eagles 3-point favorites here at home against the Cowboys. It's an interesting game, man, but I think that the Eagles have enough going in their way to get this one done. I don't think it's going to be quite on the same level as it was against the Commanders, kind of just that back and forth blowout. The Jordan Davis injury actually kind of scares me a little bit. I didn't realize he was still a limited participant because that could change the complexion of things. But, the spread is tricky for me, this 3 points.
Oh, yeah.
I have the Eagles winning, finding a way to get it done against the Cowboys. But, man, I don't see it being much different than I'm going to go 26-20. I'm going to go 26-20. I'm going to go 26-22. I'm going to have the Eagles still covering the spread, but I think it's going to be, one of those games where it's like it's going to kind of be a lot of back and forth. I think the Eagles really have to limit the turnovers, especially if they, aren't fully healthy with Jordan Davis on the defense, and the Cowboys are able to. If the Cowboys are able to establish the run, it's going to be paramount that the Eagles don't turn the ball over. So I think they still have enough to do it and get it done, and I have faith in their offense to still move the football. I'm going to go with that 26-22.
All right, I'm going to go. See, a part of me is like this is going to be somewhat high scoring. The other part of me is like this could be a kind of ugly turnover filled game, but I mean I think that's ultimately what it comes down to, the turnovers and whoever wins that battle. But I'm going to say the Eagles win 27-24, and then that's a push, right? Like,
yeah, that's a push.
I'm just going to,
that's fine. Hey, you think it's 3 points? You think it's 3 points. That's fine.
I do. I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like these games are fairly close for the most part. I mean, I can't remember the last time Dak Prescott and Jalen Hurts played against each other, thinking about it now, because both were injured last year. I think it might have been the year before when the the Eagles got blown out in Dallas. But yeah,
this game's got some juice to it, man. I'm excited for this one. And yeah, man, I mean, I think that both of these teams have really big games this week. The Steelers got to right the ship, and they need to find a way to win this game to really just for the sake of their season at this point. I touched on this one in the next one after this against the Packers. And for the Eagles, man, their schedule this is the start of their schedule being extremely hard. And exactly. It's going to be big to get this win at home against your biggest threat in the division. Going into a bye week, you want to carry that momentum for the extended period of time. So, all right, man, you have any final thoughts as we bring this thing to a close here?
Hey, man, let's hope we both get victories.
Yeah, man, that's what we're hoping for. I mean, we can't root for the Phillies anymore. I think that was the last episode. They were still alive. That was going into
they were
Game 7. And what did Chris Russo say? He guaranteed that he was going to be.
He's going to retire.
He was going to be in Phillies. I don't remember. I wanted the Phillies to win, Ricardo. I'm going to stop busting your.
It's all right.
All right. Take care, everybody, and we will see you guys next time. We'll see you next week breaking down both of these games. Peace out. See you later.